My cousin Archie paid $50,000 over asking price for my dream cottage just to see me cry, bragging about the ocean view he'd stolen. He didn't know I'd already researched the vacant lot next door. So I bought it, built a spite fence, and ruined his investment. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The air inside the municipal auction hall smelled like stale coffee and nervous sweat. It was a suffocating, humid heat that seemed to press against the back of my neck, but I refused to take off my blazer. I needed to look professional. I needed to look like I belonged here, even though my stomach was currently doing gymnastics that would have won a gold medal. Beside me, Tristan squeezed my hand. His grip was firm, grounding. He knew exactly what this meant to me. He knew that for the last 5 years, while other couples were going on European vacations or buying new Teslas, we had been eating rice and beans, driving a sedan with a rattling muffler, and saving every single spare cent for this specific moment. "You've got this, Emma," Tristan whispered, leaning in close so the other bidders wouldn't hear. "We have the budget. We've done the inspections. It's practically yours." I nodded, my eyes fixed on the projection screen at the front of the room. There it was, Lot 402, the seashell cottage. To anyone else, it was a disaster. The roof was sagging, the shingles were rotting off like dead skin, and the porch listed dangerously to the left. But to me, a landscape architect who spent her days fixing other people's broken spaces, it was potential. It was the only property in the entire county that had an unobstructed view of the Atlantic Ocean. Well, strictly speaking, it had a view over the derelict, weed-choked strip of land in front of it, but the angle was perfect. "Next up, Lot 402, the auctioneer announced, his voice booming through the crackling speakers. "Opening bid at $200,000. I raised my paddle, number 114. "I have 200. Do I see 210? 210 to the gentleman in the back." The bidding was slow at first. Most of the developers in the room weren't interested. The lot was too small for a condo complex, and the house was historic, meaning the red tape to renovate it was a nightmare. That was my advantage. I knew the zoning laws better than anyone. I knew how to navigate the historical society. This was my niche. We hit 300,000, then 350. My upper limit was 425,000. That was everything. Our savings, a loan from my parents, and a terrifyingly large mortgage approval. 350 going once. The room went quiet. My heart hammered against my ribs. Is this it? Is it actually happening? Then, the double doors at the back of the hall swung open with a loud, theatrical bang. Heads turned, the auctioneer paused. Walking in, wearing a suit that cost more than my car and sunglasses, he definitely didn't need indoors, was Archie. My blood ran cold. Archie didn't look at the crowd. He scanned the room, spotted me, and a slow, oily grin spread across his face. He didn't walk like a normal person. He strutted, oozing that specific brand of unearned confidence that comes from being Aunt Carol's golden boy for 35 years. "Sorry I'm late," Archie announced, his voice carrying effortlessly. He held up a paddle he must have grabbed from the registration desk on his way in. 400,000. The air left my lungs. He jumped the bid by $50,000 in a single breath. Tristan stiffened beside me. What is he doing here? He told the family he was in Dubai. He lied, I whispered, my voice trembling. I raised my paddle, 410. Archie didn't even look at the auctioneer. He looked directly at me, pulled his sunglasses down the bridge of his nose, and winked. 420, Archie said. 425, I choked out. That was it. That was my cap. I couldn't go a penny higher without bankrupting us. Archie laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of a sound. Oh, come on, Emma. Is that really all you brought to the table? Let's make this interesting. 475. The room gasped. A $50,000 jump was insane for a property like this. The auctioneer looked stunned but quickly recovered, sensing a commission spike. I have 475. 475 to the gentleman in the Italian suit. Do I hear 480? I stared at Archie. He wasn't looking at the screen. He wasn't looking at the picture of the house. He didn't care about the foundation or the roof or the zoning. He was staring right at me, his eyebrows raised in a mocking challenge. He knew exactly how much I had saved. He knew this was my dream, and he was buying it solely to ensure I didn't get it. Going once, the auctioneer droned. I looked at Tristan. His face was pale. He shook his head slightly. We couldn't do it. We literally couldn't do it. Going twice. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and humiliating. I lowered my paddle. Sold to bidder number 205 for $475,000. The gavel slammed down, sounding like a gunshot in the silent room. Archie clapped his hands together, victorious. He walked over to us, bypassing the auctioneer's assistants who were trying to get his signature. He stopped right in front of me, looming over my chair. "Tough break, cuz," he said, flashing his veneers. "But honestly, you did me a favor. I needed a place to park some cash, and the view from this dump is going to be worth millions once I tear it down. Don't worry, I'll invite you to the housewarming. You can park the cars." He laughed again, patted Tristan on the shoulder with condescending force, and walked away to sign the papers. I sat there, frozen, unable to breathe. I felt physically ill, a nausea roiling in my gut that had nothing to do with the heat. It wasn't just that I had lost the house. It was that he had taken it with such casual cruelty, tossing around an amount of money that represented 10 years of my life like it was pocket change. The betrayal, I whispered to Tristan, my voice barely audible, was worse than the diagnosis itself. I realized I wasn't talking about a medical diagnosis, but the diagnosis of our family dynamic, the realization that my cousin wasn't just competitive, he was a predator. The drive home was silent. Not the comfortable silence Tristan and I usually shared, but a heavy, thick silence that felt like mourning. The rain had started to fall as we left the auction house, turning the world gray and miserable, matching the pit in my stomach perfectly. When we walked into our small apartment, I didn't even take off my shoes. I just walked straight to the sofa and collapsed, staring at the ceiling. "I can't believe he did that," Tristan said, finally breaking the silence as he walked into the kitchen to start the kettle. "He didn't even want that house, Emma. Last week at the barbecue, he was bragging about buying a penthouse in the city." "He wants whatever I want," I said, my voice hollow. "He always has. If I wanted a bike, he needed a better bike. If I got good grades, he had to cheat to get better ones. He couldn't stand the idea of me having something special." My phone buzzed on the coffee table, then it buzzed again, and again. I picked it up, a group chat notification, the family thread. "Archie just picked up a little investment property, oceanfront baby, who wants to come for a demolition party next month." Attached was a selfie of him standing in front of my cottage, holding the sold sign, giving a thumbs up. Then came the reply from Aunt Carol. "Aunt Carol, so proud of you, sweetie. You have such a brilliant mind for business. Emma, did you see this? Archie says you were there too. It's so nice you two can share these hobbies." I threw the phone onto the cushions. "Hobbies?" I spat out. "She thinks my career and my life savings are a hobby compared to his gambling." Tristan brought me a mug of tea and sat down, pulling my legs over his lap. "We'll find something else," he said gently. "We always figure it out." "It's not about finding something else," I said, tears finally spilling over. "It's that spot, Tristan, the topography, the way the light hits the ridge. I had the blueprints drawn in my head. I knew exactly how I was going to terrace the garden so we could see the sunset over the water." "I know," he soothed. "I know." The phone rang. It wasn't a text this time, it was a call. "Don't answer it," Tristan warned. I looked at the screen. Archie. I shouldn't have answered. I should have blocked him. But a dark, masochistic part of me needed to hear what he had to say. I swiped accept and put it on speaker. "Emma," Archie's voice was loud, likely competing with the wind. Hey, look, I wanted to say no hard feelings about today. Business is business, right? You overpaid by 75 grand, Archie, I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to sound cold. That's not business, that's stupidity. Pocket change, he scoffed. And it's not stupidity when you see the vision. I'm standing on the porch right now. I'm looking at my ocean. It's magnificent. I'm going to tear this rotting shack down, put up a 3-story glass modern marvel. Floor-to-ceiling windows facing the water. It's going to be the jewel of the coastline. I'll probably double my money in 2 years. The jewel of the coastline, I repeated, closing my eyes. Exactly. Unobstructed views, Emma. That's what people pay for. You can't put a price on an infinite horizon. I paused. Something in his words triggered a memory. A faint, scratching detail from the hours and hours I had spent poring over the County Sioux. RV maps and zoning PDFs. Unobstructed views. You know, Archie continued, clearly enjoying his monologue, Mom thinks you should come help me with the landscaping. I'd pay you, of course. Friends and family rate. I'm a landscape architect, Archie, not a gardener, I said, my eyes snapping open. I sat up straighter on the couch. Same difference. Anyway, gotta run. I have a contractor meeting. Just wanted to make sure you weren't crying into a pillow or anything. Click. I sat there, the phone still in my hand, the dial tone buzzing. He's a monster, Tristan muttered. Tristan, I said, my voice changing. The sadness was evaporating, replaced by a sudden, sharp clarity. Hand me the iPad. What? Why? Just hand it to me. He passed it over. I frantically opened my files, scrolling through the saved PDFs of the property lines for the coastal district. I zoomed in on lot 402, the cottage Archie just bought. What are you looking for? Tristan asked, leaning over my shoulder. I traced the red line of the property boundary. The cottage sat on a rise. Below it, sloping down toward the rocky beach, was another strip of land. Lot 403. Archie said he has an unobstructed view, I murmured, my heart starting to race, not from fear this time, but from adrenaline. He thinks the land in front of the house is part of the property, or that it's protected conservation land. Isn't it? Tristan asked. It's just scrub brush and rocks. Nobody has built there in 50 years. I pulled up the zoning code for lot 403. It was classified as R2 residential nonconforming. It's not conservation land, I whispered. It's a separate, buildable lot. It's narrow, it's ugly, and it's been on the market as a distressed asset for 3 years because nobody thinks you can build a house on it. Can you? Tristan asked. I looked at the dimensions. I looked at the setback requirements. I did the mental math that only a landscape architect with 10 years of experience in this specific county could do. You can't build a house, I said, a slow, dangerous smile forming on my lips for the first time all day. Not a standard one. The septic requirements wouldn't allow for the bedrooms. So it's useless. No, I said, looking at Tristan. You can't build a house, but under the current zoning laws, you are perfectly entitled to build an accessory structure or a privacy wall up to 20 feet high, as long as it includes a living element like a vertical garden. Tristan looked at the map, then at me. Emma, that lot is right in front of Archie's porch. Directly in front, I confirmed. If someone were to build something there, say, a very tall, very dense vertical garden structure, his infinite horizon would become a view of a wooden wall. But he had forgotten one crucial thing, I said, tapping the screen. He never looks at the details. To understand why I was about to do what I was about to do, you have to understand Archie. Or rather, you have to understand the cult of Archie. Since we were kids, Archie was the protagonist of the universe. I was just the NPC. When we were 7, I saved up my allowance for months to buy a specific red bicycle. 2 days after I got it, Archie rode it into a creek, ruining the chain and bending the frame. When I cried, Aunt Carol didn't scold him. She sighed, looked at me with pity, and said, "Oh, Emma, don't be so dramatic. He was just testing it out. He has such an adventurous spirit. You should be flattered he wanted to ride yours." That was the refrain of my childhood. Be flattered, be the bigger person. Archie is special. Archie failed algebra 3 times. I tutored him every night for a month so he could graduate. When he got a C-, Aunt Carol threw him a party. I was valedictorian, and at my graduation dinner, Archie announced he was starting a business, selling knockoff sunglasses, and spent the whole meal pitching my parents for investment capital. Now we were in our 30s. I had spent 7 years in university and 5 years working 80-hour weeks to become a licensed landscape architect. I understood soil composition, structural loads, drainage tables, and municipal law. Archie did things. He sold crypto. He flipped sneakers. He got into consulting. He was currently calling himself a high-end real estate speculator, which apparently meant using his parents' retirement fund to buy properties he didn't understand, slapping a coat of gray paint on them, and selling them to unsuspecting out-of-towners. But this time, the dynamic was different. This wasn't a bicycle. This was my home, and more importantly, he had entered my world. "Are you sure about this?" Tristan asked later that night. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the blueprints for the useless Lot 403 spread out between us. "The lot is cheap, sure. $15,000 because everyone thinks it's unbuildable, but the construction costs." "I can design it myself," I said, sketching furiously on a notepad. "And since you're a structural engineer, you can stamp the drawings." Tristan smiled. "I can." "We buy the lot quietly," I outlined the plan. "LLC name, something generic, Coastal Preservation Partners." Archie won't look twice. He's too busy picking out Italian marble for a house he hasn't even renovated yet. And then, I said, circling the elevation markers on the survey. We wait. We let him sink his money into the renovation. We let him tear down the old cottage. We let him frame up his 3-story glass monstrosity. We wait until he is leveraged to the hilt. "That sounds expensive for him," Tristan noted. "It will be," I agreed. "And just when he's ready to list it, just when he's counting his millions, we break ground." I looked at the map. The antagonist of my life was about to learn that in the world of real estate, the loudest person in the room isn't the most powerful. The person with the survey map is. "He wants a view," I said, dropping my pencil onto the table. "I'll give him a view. I'm going to give him a view of the most expensive, legally compliant, view-blocking fence this county has ever seen." The next morning, I called the listing agent for Lot 403. "You're interested in the strip?" the agent asked, sounding confused. "Honey, you know you can't build a dwelling on that, right? It's basically a glorified driveway." "I know," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm a landscape architect. I'm just interested in agricultural usage, growing some plants." "Suit yourself," the agent laughed. "The seller will probably take 10 grand just to get it off the tax books." "I'll send the check today," I said. The next 6 months were an exercise in patience that tested the very limits of my sanity. While Tristan and I quietly finalized the purchase of Lot 403 under the obscure LLC name, Coastal Windbreak Solutions, Archie began his assault on the landscape. He didn't just renovate the seashell cottage, he obliterated it. I watched from a distance, sometimes driving by, sometimes hearing the updates through the breathless, admiring commentary of Aunt Carol on the family group chat, as the charming, weathered shingles were torn away. The historic porch was chainsawed into kindling. The sloping roofline, which had weathered a century of storms, was replaced by a flat, industrial roof deck. Archie was building a glass box. It was the kind of house that belongs in a magazine about Lowe's Angels billionaires, not perched on a rugged, salt-sprayed Atlantic coastline. It was all steel beams, sharp angles, and massive, floor-to-ceiling windows. Every single window faced the ocean. Every single room was oriented around that view. About 4 months into construction, my phone rang. It was Archie. "Emma, long time no talk," he shouted. I could hear power saws whining in the background. Look, I need a favor. The contractor is asking about native ground cover for the slope. Since you're the expert on plants, why don't you swing by? I'll give you the grand tour. You'll die when you see the master suite. I looked at Tristan across the kitchen table. We had just received the stamped approval from the county zoning board for our eco-friendly vertical windbreak and pollinator habitat. I'd love to come by, Archie, I said, a genuine smile touching my lips. I'd love to see what you've done with the place. I drove over an hour later. The house was undeniably impressive in a cold, sterile way. It loomed over the landscape, aggressive and imposing. Archie met me at the front door, wearing a hard hat that looked brand new and holding a roll of blueprints he definitely didn't know how to read. "Welcome to the Vista," he announced, spreading his arms. "That's what I'm calling it. Catchy, right? Branding is everything." He led me through the house. It was a hollow echo chamber of drywall dust and pretension. But the piece de resistance was the living room. The entire back wall was missing, replaced by a single, seamless pane of glass that must have cost $50,000 alone. Through it, the view was breathtaking. The ocean churned gray and blue, the horizon stretching out forever. And right there at the bottom of the frame was my ugly, scrubby strip of land, Lot 403. "Is that not the money shot?" Archie asked, standing beside me, hands on his hips. "I've already got a realtor in the city teasing it to international buyers. We're listing at $2.5 million. 2.5, I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "That's ambitious, Archie, especially considering the market." "The market doesn't apply to masterpieces, Emma," he scoffed. "And the view adds a 50% premium. I'm leveraged to the eyeballs on this, sure. I borrowed against Mom's house. I took a bridge loan from a guy I know in the city at 12% interest, but who cares? Once this sells, I clear a cool $1 million. In profit, easy money." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. He borrowed against Aunt Carol's house. "You risked Aunt Carol's home for this," I asked, turning to look at him. "It's not a risk if you can't lose," he said, winking. "Besides, she believes in me, unlike some people." He gestured toward the window. "So, about that ground cover, I need something low, very low. I don't want a single blade of grass obstructing this sightline." I walked up to the glass. I looked down at the property line stakes, which were clearly visible. His manicured lawn stopped abruptly where the rough weeds of my lot began. "You know, Archie," I said softly, "you really should have checked the survey on that lower lot before you installed a $100,000 window wall." "Why?" he laughed, checking his watch. "It's a ditch. Nobody owns it. It's just nature." "Actually," I said, turning to face him, "someone bought it 3 months ago." Archie frowned, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "Who? The Conservation Trust?" "No, a private developer." "Whatever," he waved his hand dismissively. "They can't build there, it's too small. I checked." "You checked for a residential dwelling," I corrected him. "You didn't check for accessory structures." "You're boring me with the technical stuff, Emma. Just tell me what to plant on my side so it looks good for the brochure photos next week." I smiled. "Plant clover, Archie, it's cheap." I walked out of the vista with my heart hammering. He was leveraged. He had gambled his mother's safety net on this flip. If the house didn't sell, or if it sold for less than his loans, he wouldn't just be broke. He would drag the whole family down with him. For a second, I hesitated. Was I really going to do this? Then I remembered the auction. I remembered him laughing as he bid me up, purely for sport. I remembered him calling my career a hobby. I got into my car and called Tristan. "Schedule the contractors," I said. "We break ground on Monday." Monday morning broke with a heavy coastal mist, the kind that muffles sound and makes the world feel small. But by 8:00 a.m., the silence was shattered by the roar of a heavy-duty diesel engine. I was parked down the road, sipping coffee from a thermos, watching through binoculars. The flatbed truck rumbled down the narrow lane, carrying a massive hydraulic auger, a drill designed for sinking deep pilings. Behind it was a lumber truck loaded with 6x6 pressure-treated posts, each one towering 22 feet long. They pulled up to the curb of Lot 403, directly in front of Archie's gleaming glass house. I saw the front door of the Vista fly open. Archie ran out in his bathrobe, stumbling into the wet grass. He was screaming something, waving his arms frantically, but the sound of the truck backing up drowned him out. I put the car in drive and rolled slowly down the street, pulling up right as Archie was screaming at the foreman. "Private property, you can't park here, I'll have you arrested." Archie's face was a mottled red, his hair wild. The foreman, a burly guy named Mike who I had worked with on 3 previous commercial projects, just looked at his clipboard. "We're on lot 403, buddy. We have a work order." "There is no work order," Archie shrieked. "Nobody owns this. Get off my lawn." "Actually," I said, stepping out of my car and closing the door with a satisfying thud. "They're not on your lawn, Archie. They're on mine." Archie spun around, nearly slipping in the mud. He looked at me, then at the trucks, then back at me. His brain seemed to be misfiring. What are you doing here?" "I'm meeting my contractors," I said, adjusting my raincoat. "I own lot 403. I bought it the week after the auction." Archie stared at me. He let out a breathless, confused laugh. You bought the ditch. Why? You wasted 15 grand on a patch of weeds." "I'm a landscape architect, remember?" I said, walking past him to the property line where Mike was waiting. "I see potential where others don't." "Well, tell them to leave," Archie snapped, regaining his composure. "I have potential buyers coming for a viewing on Friday. I can't have construction noise." "I'm afraid that's not possible," I said calmly. "We have a tight schedule. We're building a vertical biodiversity windbreak. It's a very complex structure." "Eh, what?" "A fence, Archie," I said. "A very, very large fence." Archie froze. He looked up at the massive posts on the truck. He looked back at his house, his beautiful, glass-fronted house that relied entirely on the view for its value. "You can't," he whispered. "You can't build a fence there. There are height restrictions. You can't go over 6 feet." "For a residential boundary fence, you are absolutely correct," I said, pulling a folded document from my pocket. "Section 14, paragraph B of the Coastal Zoning Code. However, if the structure is classified as an environmental wind mitigation system with integrated live plantings, and it is set back 5 feet from the road, the height limit is 20 feet. I handed him the permit. It was stamped with the official county seal. 20 feet, Archie choked out. 20 feet, I confirmed. Which, by my calculations, is exactly 3 feet higher than the top of your living room window. Archie snatched the paper from my hand. His eyes scanned it frantically. This is bullshit. You're doing this to spite me." "I'm doing this to improve the local ecology," I said, my voice ice cold. "I'm creating a habitat for native pollinators. It just so happens that the best location for the windbreak is directly along the northern ridge of my property." "You're going to block the view," he said, his voice rising to a panic. "You're going to block the whole damn view." "Technically," I said, "I'm enhancing the view. Instead of the ocean, you'll be looking at a wall of sustainable English ivy. It's very calming." "I'll sue you," Archie screamed, spit flying from his mouth. "I'll sue you for everything you have. I'll bury you." "You can try," I said, turning my back on him. "Mike, go ahead and fire up the auger. Let's get these posts set before lunch." The engine roared to life. A massive steel drill bit began to tear into the earth, sending a spray of dirt into the air. Archie stood there, small and powerless in his bathrobe, as the first hole was dug into his financial future. The construction of the wall took 4 days. They were the most chaotic 4 days of my life. Archie didn't just try to sue, he went scorched earth. First came the police. Archie called them, claiming I was trespassing and damaging his property. When the officers arrived, I showed them the survey stakes. The construction was fully within my lines. They told Archie to stop wasting their time and left. Then came the lawyer. A cease and desist letter was taped to my apartment door the next morning, claiming tortious interference with prospective economic advantage. I called Tristan's brother, who was a contract attorney. He read the letter and laughed. He has no case. You have a permit, you own the land. In America, you generally don't have a right to a view unless there's a specific easement. Does he have a view easement? No, I said, he didn't check. Then he's bluffing, he's trying to scare you. But the worst part wasn't the police or the lawyers. It was the family. By day 3, when the horizontal slats were being screwed into place, effectively turning Archie's panoramic ocean view into a view of pressure-treated pine, my phone blew up. Aunt Carol, Emma, how could you? Archie is distraught. He says you are ruining his investment on purpose. I raised you better than to be this petty. Uncle Dave, Emma, Archie says he stands to lose a lot of money if you don't take that thing down. We're talking about family money here. Be reasonable. I ignored them all. I stayed on the job site, overseeing every screw, every planter box. The structure was magnificent. It was a sturdy, timber-framed wall, standing a full 20 feet high and stretching the entire width of the property. On my side, it was going to be a lush vertical garden. On Archie's side, it was a blank, imposing wooden barricade. On the final day of construction, I was inspecting the irrigation lines when a sleek black Mercedes pulled up. It wasn't Archie. It was a man I didn't recognize, older, wearing a suit that looked serious. He walked up to the property line where I was standing. "Ms. Emma," he asked. "Yes." "I'm Robert Vane. I'm the primary investor in the Vista project." My stomach dropped slightly. This was the guy in the city Archie had borrowed money from. "Can I help you, Mr. Vane?" He looked up at the wall, then he looked at the house behind it. The wall completely eclipsed the first floor. The infinity view was now a view of lumber. The house felt claustrophobic, trapped behind the barrier. "Archie told me there was a minor obstruction involving a neighbor," Vane said, his voice dangerously calm. "This isn't minor." "No," I said, "it's 20 feet. This renders the property value significantly lower than projected," Vane said. He turned his cold gaze on me. "Is there a price to remove it?" This was the moment. I could have asked for money. I could have asked for a payoff. "It's not for sale," I said. "This is a permanent installation." Vane stared at me for a long moment, assessing me. Then he looked back at the house, where Archie was watching us from the second-floor window, looking pale and terrified. "I see," Vane said. "Well, that is unfortunate for Archie." He got back in his car and drove away. 10 minutes later, Archie came storming out of the house. He wasn't screaming this time, he was crying. "You have to take it down," he sobbed, clutching the fence posts. "Emma, please, Vane just called me. He's calling the loan. He says the collator. Al, the house is impaired. He wants his money back, all of it, plus the interest." "I don't have it," Archie choked out. "I spent it on the windows. I spent it on the roof. If I can't sell this place for $2 million, I'm bankrupt. And Mom, he has a lien on Mom's house." I looked at him through the gaps in the slats. The arrogance was gone. The golden boy veneer had cracked, revealing the frightened, incompetent child beneath. "You should have thought about that," I said, my voice steady but heavy with the weight of the moment, "before you spent $50,000 just to make me cry." "I'm begging you," he wept. "What do you want? I'll do anything." I looked at the house. It was a beautiful shell, trapped behind my wall. "I want the house," I said. Archie's head snapped up. "What?" "I want the house," I repeated. "But I'm not paying $2 million for it. I'm not paying $475. I'll pay off the lien you took on Aunt Carol's house, and I'll take over the mortgage, that's it. You walk away with nothing, but your mother keeps her home." That's robbery," Archie stammered. "I put $600,000 into the renovation." "And I put a 20-foot wall in front of it," I said. "Right now, that house is worth nothing to anyone but me, because I'm the only one who can take the wall down." I pulled a contract out of my bag. I had prepared it with Tristan's brother the night before. "You have until 5:00 p.m., I said, "or I plant the ivy." The deadline I had set was 5:00 p.m. At 4:15 p.m., the cavalry arrived. I was sitting on the tailgate of my truck, parked on my side of the wall, drinking a bottle of water and watching the shadows lengthen across the dirt of Lot 403. The air was thick with the scent of fresh lumber, and the salt spray from the ocean I couldn't see but could definitely hear. I expected Archie to come out with a pen. Instead, 3 cars pulled up to the curb of his property in rapid succession. First was Aunt Carol's beige sedan, then came Uncle Dave's truck. Finally, Archie's flashy lease sports car pulled in, boxing them all in. They didn't come to the front door of the house. They walked straight around the side, marching through the mud toward where I was sitting. It looked like a military formation, with Aunt Carol at the point, her handbag clutched like a weapon. Archie trailed behind them, looking down at his phone, refusing to make eye contact with me. I stayed on the tailgate. I didn't stand up. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me defensive. "Emma Rose," Aunt Carol's voice was shrill, cutting through the sound of the wind. "This has gone on long enough. I want this monstrosity taken down immediately." She stopped at the property line, gesturing wildly at the 20-foot wall of timber that loomed over us. "Hello, Aunt Carol," I said calmly. "It's good to see you. You're trespassing, by the way. This is Lot 403. "Don't you give me that legal mumbo-jumbo," she snapped. "We are family. Do you have any idea what you are doing to your cousin? He is sick with worry. He hasn't slept in 3 days. "He looks tired," I agreed, glancing at Archie, who was hovering near the corner of the fence, looking pale and sweaty. Maybe he should have slept before he tried to ruin my financial future at the auction. "That was business," Uncle Dave chimed in, stepping forward. He was a large man who usually avoided conflict, but Archie had clearly spun a compelling sob story. "The boy saw an opportunity. You can't punish him for being sharper than you." "Sharper," I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Dave, look at this wall. Does this look like the work of someone who was outsmarted?" "It looks like spite," Carol screamed. "Pure, jealous spite. You couldn't handle that he won, so you're trying to destroy him. Archie told us everything. He told us you're demanding the deed to the house. He told us you're trying to steal his hard work." "Steal?" I asked. "I offered to buy it. I offered to take over the debts." "For pennies," Carol yelled. "He put his soul into this house, and you want to take it for nothing? I am ashamed of you. Your mother would be ashamed of you." That was the line. That was the trigger. I hopped off the tailgate. My boots hit the ground with a heavy thud. I walked up to the property line, standing toe-to-toe with my aunt. "Don't you bring my mother into this," I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerously quiet. "And if Archie told you everything, then I assume he told you about Mr. Vane." The silence that followed was heavy. Carol blinked. "Who?" I looked at Archie. He flinched physically, taking a step back. "Archie," I said, raising my voice so it carried over the wind. "You didn't tell her. You brought her here to fight your battle, and you didn't even give her the briefing." "Shut up, Emma," Archie hissed. "Just shut up. We can work this out." "No," I said. "We're done working it out. It's 4:30. You have 30 minutes. I turned back to Aunt Carol. "Archie didn't use his own money to buy this place, Carol. He didn't have $475. He borrowed the down payment from a hard money lender in the city named Robert Vane. Predatory rates, high risk." "So," Carol said, though her voice wavered, "businessmen take loans, that's normal." "And for the renovation," I continued. "The glass wall, the steel beams, that was another $200,000. He didn't have that either, so he needed collateral, real collateral, something with equity." I watched the realization slowly dawn on her face. Her grip on her handbag loosened. "He told me," Carol stammered. "He told me he just needed me to sign a character reference, a guarantor form for a business line of credit." I pulled a file folder from my truck. I had come prepared. Tristan's brother had pulled the public records from the county clerk's office that morning. "This is a deed of trust," I said, holding up the document. "Recorded 4 months ago, it places a second lien on 42 Maple Drive." Carol's face went white. Maple Drive was her house, her paid-off retirement sanctuary. "Archie," she whispered, turning slowly to look at her son. Archie looked at the ground, at the fence, at the sky, anywhere but her. "Mom, it was a sure thing. The house was going to sell for 2.5. I was going to pay it off next week. You were never in danger. Emma is she's blowing it out of proportion." "The investor was here yesterday, Carol," I said ruthlessly. "He saw the wall. He knows the view is gone. He knows the house is worth half of what Archie projected. He's calling the loan. If Archie doesn't pay him $600,000 by the end of the month, Mr. Vane forecloses. Not on this house. There's no equity here. He forecloses on your house." The silence on the hillside was absolute. Even the seagulls seemed to stop screaming. Carol stared at her son, the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong, the one whose bicycle accidents were always someone else's fault. "You gambled my house," she asked, her voice trembling. "You gambled my home on a view." "I didn't lose it," Archie shouted, his voice cracking. "She did. Emma did. If she takes down the wall, we're fine. Tell her to take down the wall, Mom." He was still doing it. At 35 years old, he was still hiding behind his mother's skirt, demanding she fix his mess. But something had broken in Carol. I watched it happen. The lifetime of excuses, of enabling, of blind adoration. It all shattered under the weight of the terrifying reality that she might be homeless in 30 days. She turned to me. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked old. "Can you fix it?" she asked softly. "I can," I said. "My offer stands. I take the house. I take the debt. I pay off Vane immediately using my own financing. The lien on your house is released. Archie walks away with nothing, but he walks away clean, and you keep your home." Carol nodded, a single jerky motion. She turned back to Archie. He was opening his mouth to argue, to plead, to spin another lie. "Sign it," she said. "Mom, you can't be serious. This is worth millions. We can fight the fence in court. We can." "Sign the damn papers, Archie," she screamed, a primal sound of betrayal and fear that echoed off the wooden slats of my spite fence. "You risked my life. You lied to me. Give her the house and get out of my sight." Archie crumbled. Without his mother's unconditional belief, he was nothing but a fraud in a cheap suit. He looked at me, his eyes full of hate, but he knew he was beaten. I handed him the clipboard and a pen. He signed the deed transfer on the hood of his leased sports car, his hand shaking so badly he tore the paper. "You win," he spat at me as he threw the clipboard back. "I hope you rot in this place." "I don't plan to rot," I said, checking the signature. "I plan to garden." Archie was right about one thing. The house was a mess. Not physically. Physically, it was a brand new, high-end construction. But spiritually, it was a disaster. It was a cold, soulless box designed for a brochure, not for a life. It took 6 months to exorcise his ghost from the property. The first thing Tristan and I did was address the situation. We didn't tear down the wall, not immediately. We had bought the house for the cost of the debts, about $650,000. It was a steal for the location, but a stretch for our budget. We couldn't afford to tear down the wall and do massive landscaping right away. So we adapted. As a landscape architect, I know that a problem is just a design feature you haven't figured out yet. We cut sections out of the 20-foot fence, creating large, framed windows in the wood. But instead of glass, we filled the voids with lattice work and climbing hydrangeas. We lowered the center section to 4 feet, restoring the view from the living room, B. Ut kept the sides high to block the wind and provide privacy from the road. The spite fence became the garden wall. It became the defining feature of the property, creating a sheltered, secret garden courtyard between the house and the sea where the wind couldn't touch us. As for the house itself, we softened Archie's sharp angles. We replaced the cold marble floors with warm, reclaimed oak. We tore out the sterile white kitchen and put in navy blue cabinets and butcher block counters. We turned the master suite into a cozy bedroom where you didn't feel like you were on display in an aquarium. We moved in just before Christmas. The family dynamic changed, as you can imagine. Archie didn't show up for Thanksgiving. We heard through the grapevine that he had moved 2 towns over. He was working as a sales associate at a high-volume car dealership. No more real estate speculation. No more consulting. Just a commission-based job with a boss who watched his hours. Aunt Carol came to Christmas dinner at our place. It was awkward at first. She was quieter than I had ever seen her. The golden boy pedestal had been smashed, and she was still trying to figure out who she was without it. We were sitting in the living room, watching the snow fall against the massive glass window. The ocean was a churning gray slate beyond the garden wall, wild and beautiful. It's really beautiful, Emma," Aunt Carol said, holding a mug of cocoa. She looked around the room at the warm wood, the plants hanging from the ceiling, the soft light. "You made it feel like a home. Archie never could have done this. He just wanted a showroom." "Thank you, Aunt Carol," I said gently. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking slightly. She didn't look at me, she looked at the fire. "For the auction, for everything, I wanted him to be successful so badly, I think I stopped looking at who he actually was." "I know," I said, and I did. I forgave her mostly, but I would never forget. Tristan walked in from the kitchen, carrying a tray of cookies. He sat down next to me, sliding his arm around my waist. "So," he asked, looking at the window, "do you think we should lower the fence another foot in the spring, get a bit more horizon?" I looked out at the structure I had built. The structure that had saved us, vindicated us, and ultimately brought us here. The ivy I had planted that first day was already climbing the posts, turning the wood green and alive. "No," I smiled, leaning my head on his shoulder. "I like it exactly the way it is. It reminds me that sometimes the best view isn't the one you buy, it's the one you build." We sat there in silence, watching the waves crash against the shore, safe behind our wall, in the house that was finally, rightfully ours.